Okay, I think I'm going to do this with me in the picture today. We are in Unit 4, Chapter 9, Lesson 3, Tensions Grow, 1833 to 1835. We will learn that as tensions between Texans and the Mexican government increased, some Texans favored declaring independence from Mexico even if it meant war. Terms to know: epidemic, a situation in which a disease spreads rapidly through a population. Temporary, lasting a short time. To repeal, to recall or do away with a law. Uniform, in a consistent manner, dictator or ruler with absolute power. Here's a map of Coahuila and the departments of Texas. The Texas department's in this lighter green color. There's San Antonio there. There's the Trinity River right here. There's Galveston, Nacogdoches, and then other departments here. There's a Gulf of Mexico. So that's kind of what it looked like. Mexico City in the 1830s. When did it happen? 1833. Stephen F. Austin takes the proposals of 1833 to Mexico City. Move me up here. 1834, Stephen F. Austin is arrested. 1835, Stephen F. Austin is released and returns to Texas. 1835, leaders call for a meeting of Texans known as the Consultation. In 1835, Andrew Briscoe is arrested at Anahuac. Austin's mission to Mexico. Guiding question: what leadership qualities does Stephen F. Austin show in dealing with Mexico? In April of 1833, Stephen F. Austin left the convention of 1833 and began the long trip to Mexico City. As the convention's representative, Austin played an important leadership role. Even colonists who did not like Austin admitted to his great influence with Mexican officials. When Austin reached Mexico City, Santa Anna was away. The new government of Mexico was not yet well organized. Also, a cholera epidemic raged in the city. There's a picture of Stephen F. Austin. Thousands of people were dying as the disease spread through the population. Austin waited to meet with officials, but he became discouraged by the lack of progress. On October 2nd, Austin wrote a letter to authorities in San Antonio. He suggested that they and other officials across Texas form a temporary state government. By November 1833, the situation in Mexico City seemed more hopeful. Santa Anna had returned and agreed to some of the Texans' proposals. For example, he was willing to repeal or do away with the law restricting immigration from the United States. However, he would not allow separate statehood for Texas. Austin left the capital for home on December 10th. In January of 1834, he reached Saltillo, the capital of the Mexican state of Coahuila y Tejas. Meanwhile, a copy of his October 2nd letter had been sent to officials in Mexico. They believed that Austin's suggestion that a new state government be formed was an act of rebellion. Austin was arrested in Saltillo and sent back to Mexico City. Texans began to press for Austin's freedom. Ramon Musquiz, a leader in San Antonio, wrote to Mexican officials. He asked for Austin's release. Lawyers Peter W. Grayson and Spencer H. Jack traveled to Mexico City to help. On Christmas Day in 1834, Mexican authorities agreed to release Austin, but he could not return to Texas. He had to stay in Mexico City and wait for the final decision on his case. Austin was finally freed on July 11th, 1835. During the nearly 2 years that Austin was away, changes took place in Texas and around the region. Although Texans were still concerned about Austin's imprisonment during 1834, conditions in Texas were getting better. The reforms Santa Anna had promised for Texas also began. English became the official language for law and business. Immigration from the United States was allowed. The court and postal systems were improved. Religious tolerance for non-Catholics was granted, and Texas was divided into 3 departments, which increased its representation in the state legislature. Officials in Mexico sent Colonel Juan Almonte to inspect Texas in 1834. He reported that all was quiet and advised that reforms should continue. There's Colonel Juan Almonte. Trouble erupts again. Guiding question: why did Texans call for a consultation? In 1835, trouble began around Anahuac. Mexican officials had begun forcing Texans there to pay duties. Local merchants, led by Andrew Briscoe, claimed that the taxes were not collected in other ports. Briscoe said that unless enforcement of the law was uniform, it was unfair. He then played a trick on the Mexican commander of the garrison. Briscoe landed a ship as though he were trying to move goods without paying duties. The cargo was nothing but bricks, and Briscoe was arrested. Briscoe's arrest angered many Texans, and in late June, William B. Travis led a group from San Felipe to Anahuac to pressure the commander to free Briscoe. The commander did free him, and then the commander and his soldiers left Texas. There is William Barrett Travis. This upset some Texans. They feared that Travis's actions might cause trouble for Austin, who was still in prison. Several towns passed resolutions assuring the Mexican government of their loyalty. Leaders at San Felipe wrote an apology to General Martin Perfecto de Cos. He was Santa Anna's brother-in-law and commander of the Mexican forces in Coahuila. General Cos demanded that Texas officials arrest those who had caused the trouble and turn them over to the military for trial. Cos also ordered the arrest of Lorenzo de Zavala, a respected Mexican leader. De Zavala had helped write the Mexican Constitution of 1824. He had been critical of actions by Santa Anna and had moved to Texas for safety. Cos announced that he would take a large force to Texas to arrest disloyal people. On August 15, 1835, town leaders of Columbia called for a meeting. It became known as the consultation. Because the members were to consult or share ideas on the issues, it was to take place at Washington on the Brazos. Texans were divided about the consultation. One group, called the Peace Party, worried that the meeting would lead to trouble. I'll go back. Okay, sorry. One group called the Peace Party worried that the meeting would lead to trouble. Another group called the War Party favored the meeting. Many in this group had been disappointed when the Mexican government stopped issuing land contracts. William H. Wharton and William B. Travis favored an immediate declaration of independence for Mexico, even if it meant war. Shortly after the call for the consultation, Stephen F. Austin returned from his 2 years in Mexico. Leaders of the Peace Party hoped that he would oppose the consultation. Delegates had not yet been chosen. They hoped that if he opposed it, others would give up the idea. At a meeting in Brazoria in September, Austin spoke in favor of the consultation. He was now convinced that Santa Anna was becoming a dictator, or a ruler with total power. He worried about Santa Anna's decision to send large numbers of troops to Texas. Austin believed the time had come to act. He said, "War is our only recourse. There is no other remedy. We must defend our rights, ourselves, and our country by force of arms." Because he was so respected, Austin's words had a major effect. Soon after he spoke, delegates were elected and preparations for the consultation began. And that's it.